Sound one. Sound one. Test mic one. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We would like to request all of our guests to please proceed to your designated seats and settle down as we're about to start our program very shortly. We're also requesting our guests who are still outside to please enter the premises for us to start in a timely manner. Thank you very much and good morning. sound. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We're about to start our program in a short while, requesting all of our guests to please proceed to your designated seats. And for our photographers, to please proceed to your designated areas as well. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Once again, we would like to welcome everyone for the Manila Dialogue in the South China Sea. For today, we have our first panel, and for the opening plenary, it'll be the Coast Guard as guardians of the rule of law at sea. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our panel chair for this morning, Vice President of East-West Center, Dr. Satsu Limay. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, there we go. This one works. Okay. Well, terrific. What a great start yesterday evening with the opening dinner and wonderful speakers. I want to begin by complimenting and congratulating all of the partners and organizers who've achieved this momentous event, I think, of inaugural Manila Dialogue on the South China Sea. I'm very grateful to Jeff or Danielle at Pacific Forum and others for inviting me to chair this first session. And as you can see, the lineup is really terrific to take up the issue of the Coast Guard as guardians of the rule of law at sea. And as Jeffrey said last night in his remarks, I was really taken with the focus on the rule of law. And so inviting serving officials of Coast Guards and maritime elements of their respective regional countries, I think, is a really critical way to think about the rule of law beyond lawyers and policy experts and other government officials. And as you can see from the lineup, we have a terrific set of speakers. So without further ado, I want to give them each approximately 7 minutes, and immediately after the conclusion of the speakers, I've been instructed to go straight to the floor for Q&A, comments, and questions, and I will try to recognize as many people as possible. You have the full biographies of each of the panelists, so rather than take up time to introduce each of them and their extensive experience and expertise on the issues concerned, let me immediately turn to our first speaker, Admiral Ronnie Gavan, who is the Commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard, and he will begin with his initial opening remarks. Admiral.
Sorry about that. Dr. Satulamay, I hope I pronounce it right.
Superb.
To my fellow speakers this morning, my good friend from Indonesian Coast Guard, who was very happy last night, I suppose. Vice Admiral Irvancia, sir. Vice Admiral Hiroaki Kanusui, representing Japan Coast Guard. He's the Vice Commandant of Japan Coast Guard. First Admiral Datuk Che Engku Suhaimi, Che Engku Daik, our friend from Malaysian Coast Guard. And of course, beside me, who I think is the youngest ambassador so far, His Excellency Lai Tan Tai Bin from Vietnam, fellow attendees in this dialogue, the distinguished brains from all over the world who are here today, good morning. I'd like to start by going back to the statement of our President, His Excellency President Ferdinand E. Marcos, R. Marcos Jr., during the 123rd anniversary of the Philippine Coast Guard, when he said, "In the face of tension, it is your calm resolve that prevents dispute from turning into conflict, demonstrating to the world that embracing dialogue and cooperation is the true essence of strength." We are here today, obviously, because we are all strong. And to rephrase further the President's statement in the aftermath of an incident that transpired in the West Philippine Sea in June, he said, Our great ambition as a nation is to provide a peaceful and prosperous life to every Filipino. This reminds me that indeed the role of Coast Guard in the new geopolitics in the West Philippine Sea is unique. As further clarified by the President, he said that Coast Guard should stand as the vigilant stewards of peace and order upon our seas, to ensure that the rule of law prevails across all our waters. So for the Coast Guard, there is only one mantra: the rule of law. So for the Philippine Coast Guard, in pursuing this role, we are following three tracks. One, we pursue maritime domain awareness and response, where we advance the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and the Arbitral Award through our rules on the use of force, and telling the world that we abide by it and how others defy it. It is that first track that provides us with the ability to show to the world who follows the rules and who is the bully on the ground. And second, we strengthen our foothold on what we believe is ours according to law by creating for the country, establishing for the country as many stations, Coast Guard stations, as much as we can, to promote governance of the seas. And third, which is very, very significant for what we are doing today, is the Philippine Coast Guard recognizing that we are the least coercive, in fact, the friendliest among armed services of the country, is pursuing international cooperation and engagement as our way to foster this and to leverage the strength of our like-minded friends. So I am here today representing the Philippine Coast Guard as the country's new sword in creating this environment which we hope will define the new way of keeping the peace that the world deserves. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Admiral Gavan, and you very much were well within your time, so thank you very much. I hope we can come back to you for some questions and comments from our colleagues gathered around this big room. It's now my pleasure to call upon Vice Admiral Irvanse, Chief of the Baklama of the Indonesian Maritime Security Agency. Vice Admiral. Does yours work, just in case? No? No. Okay, I'll give you this one.
Thank you, Moderator. Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning for all of us. It's a great honor for me as Chief of Indonesian Coast Guard to deliver a speech at this forum. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the government of the Philippines and our good friend, Philippine Coast Guard, for the opportunity. It is a privilege to join this highly respected forum and gather here to this session with Ambassador Lai Tenbin, Admiral Gavan, Vice Admiral Kanusue, and First Admiral J. Engku Suhaimi. In this session, as we discuss the role of Coast Guard as the guardian of the rule of the law at the sea, how Coast Guard will maintain safety and security in the South China Sea, I would like to briefly frame our position. As the South China Sea is a strategic area that borders Brunei, Darussalam, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, and China, in certain parts, there are overlapping jurisdictions between claimant states, Brunei, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, and China, resulted potential conflict in this region quite high. In this sense, even though Indonesia is not a claimant state, as a law enforcement agency at sea, and in accordance with international law, including the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, Indonesia Coast Guard will remain consistently performing and jointly into each endeavor intended for maintaining the stability of the region. Politically and geostrategically, Indonesia's interests for a stable and safe South China Sea were due to its advantage, posing a significant road for international shipping. In addition to this reasonable background, Indonesia were considering its attention to national maritime waters which lies within the Andaman Sea, Malacca Strait, and Natuna Sea to be fully controlled and manageable. With that being said, several practical efforts has been implemented by Indonesian Coast Guard to avoid potential conflict in the South China Sea as following. The first, playing an active role in ASEAN Coast Guard Forum establishment. The objective of the forum are dialogue and exchange of perspective to enhance cooperation by promoting trust and confidence building measures, strengthening capacity and coordinating among Coast Guard and Maritime Law Enforcement Agency of ASEAN member states. Within this mechanism, members involved in mutual understanding to non-politically cooperate while sharing the common interests. Confidence building process will allow members to directly discuss and produce solutions to resolve issues over territorial and jurisdictional claimants amongst member and or extra-regional states through a peaceful means through dialogue and negotiation. The second, establishing bilateral cooperation through Memorandum of Understanding with Coast Guard and Maritime Law Enforcement Agency in the region. Currently, Indonesia Coast Guard has signed MOU with Philippine Coast Guard, Vietnam Coast Guard, and Singapore Police Coast Guard. Through this existing bilateral cooperation, Indonesian Coast Guard is ensuring the existence and physical presence of state symbols, as well as affirming law enforcement as Indonesian non-military forces to continue carrying out duty and functions through an enactment of applicable legal provisions. The third one, capacity building through joint training between Coast Guard and Maritime Law Enforcement Agencies. Indonesia Coast Guard has been regularly hosted joint trainings involving Coast Guard and Maritime Law Enforcement Agency officers from Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Vietnam, in order to strengthen the capacity of the personnel, in addition to collaboration and mutual understanding between them. The goal of this aforementioned agenda is to maintain the presence of state symbols at sea by focusing on the assignment of non-military law enforcement force in EEZ and building collaboration with neighboring Coast Guard and maritime law enforcement agencies to maintain the peaceful and stable realm over the South China Sea. Thank you for your attention. Good morning.
Vice Admiral. Thank you very much, Vice Admiral, for your remarks. And we will now turn to Vice Admiral Hiroaki Kanosue, Vice Commandant of the Japan Coast Guard. Vice Admiral, please.
はい、議長ありがとうございます。私日本語で通訳を介して、お話ししたいと思います。
Thank you, Chair. Please allow me to use an interpreter.
フィリピン沿岸警備隊のガバン長官、インドネシアコーストガードのイルファンシャ長官、マレーシアのスハイミ本部長、ベトナムのライ大使、そしてラマイ議長、主催者のジェフェイさん、海上保安庁海上保安官の可能性と申します。このような素晴らしい場でスピーチできることを大変光栄に思います。
Admiral Gavan, PCG, Vice Admiral Irwansha Vakamla, First Admiral Datu Suhaimi of MMEA, His Excellency Lai, Ambassador of Vietnam to Philippines, Dr. Satu Limai, the chair of the session, as well as the lead convener, Dr. Jeffrey Daniel, and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kanosue. I'm pleased to be here with you.
世界は海でつながっています。海上保安機関の使命である海上における人命の安全の確保、遭難と災害対応の準備、海上環境保全、そして法の支配による海洋秩序の維持は地域や世界の平和と繁栄にとって不可欠なものです。
The world is connected by oceans. The mission of a Coast Guard agency to ensure safety of lives at sea, being ready for disasters, to protect the marine environment, and maintenance of maritime order through the rule of law is indispensable for the peace and prosperity of regions and the world.
海上保安機関の果たすべき役割は軍事とは別なものです。
The role of the Coast Guard is different from the military.
海上保安機関はあくまでも国際法にのっとり法執行に従事しなければなりません。その意味でこのパネルのタイトルにもあるように、海上保安機関は法の支配のガーディアンでなければなりません。
They must conduct enforcement in accordance with international law. In that sense, as stated by the title of this session, we must be guardians of the rule of law.
具体的には海上保安機関による法執行活動で重要なことは警察比例の原則に従うことです。実力行使には厳格な必要性と比例性が求められます。
The key point in law enforcement activity is the principle of proportionality, and the strict criteria of necessity versus proportionality must be applied regarding the exercise of force.
また、海上保安機関による実力行使は、違法な行為を制止するためであり、決して人を傷つけたり、物を破壊するためのものではありません。
Furthermore, the exercise of force by a Coast Guard agency is to prevent illegal activities and must never be to harm man or damage property.
海上保安機関による法執行活動は、国際法にのっとり、警察比例の原則の下で行わなければならず、その活動がいわゆる不測の事態を生じさせることがあってはなりません。
The key point in law enforcement activity is the principle of proportionality, and in the exercise of force, there must be strict adherence to the criteria of necessity and proportionality.
我々は国際法を正しく理解し、実践しなければなりません。国際法を乱用して他国の権利を侵害してはなりません。 そして海上保安機関の船舶が現状変更の道具として用いられるようなことがあってはなりません。
We must understand international laws accurately and implement it. We must not misuse it to infringe on the rights of other nations, and Coast Guard ships must not be used as tools to change the status quo.
国際法が正しく実践され、法の支配が適切に機能するために、海上保安機関間の信頼醸成は不可欠な基盤です。
Trust among Coast Guard agencies is an indispensable foundation for the rule of law to function optimally.
海上保安機関間の信頼醸成のために、各国が自国の海上保安機関に関する情報を開示することに加え、各国海上保安機関とのコミュニケーションを強化していく必要があります。
To build trust among agencies, in addition to nations disclosing information about their coast guards, the agencies themselves must enhance their communications with their foreign counterparts.
この点、日本の海上保安庁は、北太平洋やアジアにおける地域的な強力な枠組みを立ち上げ、継続的にその議論を主導しています。
For this purpose, JCG has created regional cooperation frameworks in the North Pacific and Asia and has continued to lead discussions.
また、2017年には世界海上保安機関超下級会合 CGGS を立ち上げ、法の支配による海洋秩序の維持といった普遍的価値を世界中の海上保安機関と共有する取り組みを進めています。
Furthermore, in 2017, we established the Coast Guard Global Summit to share the universal value of maintaining maritime order through the rule of law with the world's Coast Guard agencies.
本日ここにご参加の各国のコーストガード機関には、これら日本の取り組みに多大なご理解とご協力をいただいており、改めて感謝申し上げます。
The Coast Guards represented here at this forum have understood and cooperated greatly to this effort by Japan, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them.
また、二国間の協力の枠組みとしては、フィリピンをはじめ、米国、ベトナム、インドネシア、韓国、インド、中国などの近隣諸国との間で、捜索救助、犯罪取締り、海洋環境保全などの海上保安分野での連携訓練や意見交換、情報共有を積極的に推進しています。
Furthermore, within the bilateral framework, we have actively conducted joint exercises, exchange of views, and sharing of information on Coast Guard matters such as search and rescue, crime enforcement, and maritime environmental protection with neighboring nations such as the Philippines, USA, Vietnam, Indonesia, Korea, India, and China.
この中で、外国の海上保安機関からの要請に基づき、海上法執行や人命救助などに関する能力向上支援も行ってきています。
In response to requests from overseas agencies, we have also provided capacity building assistance in maritime law enforcement and search and rescue.
2017年には、外国海上保安機関の能力向上支援の専従チームである MCT、モバイルコーポレーションチームを立ち上げ、インド太平洋諸国の海上保安機関に法執行、人命救助、油防除、船舶整備などの技術指導等を継続的に行ってきています。
In 2017, we established a mobile cooperation team dedicated to providing capacity building support to foreign Coast Guard agencies, and we have continuously provided technical training in law enforcement, rescue, oil spill handling, as well as ship maintenance to Indo-Pacific nations.
また、海上保安大学校では、2015年から海上保安政策に関する修士課程のプログラムである海上保安政策プログラム MSP を開講し、アジア諸国等の海上保安機関職員を受け入れて、能力向上支援を行っています。卒業生たちはそれぞれの国に戻り、海上保安機関の幹部として活躍しています。
In addition, our Coast Guard Academy has had the Maritime Safety and Security Program, MSP, a master's course since 2015, which is open to Coast Guard officers from Asian nations to assist in their development. The graduates have returned to their countries to take on leadership roles.
このような取り組みは地域の海上保安機関間の相互理解と交流の促進に大いに貢献しているものと確信しています。
We firmly believe that these efforts contribute greatly to mutual understanding among the region's Coast Guard agencies and promotes exchange.
本日のこの会合が地域の海洋秩序の維持と安定に貢献することを心から願っています。本日はこのような機会を与えていただきありがとうございました。
I very much hope that this conference today will contribute also towards regional maritime order and stability, and thank you for providing this opportunity.
Vice Admiral, thank you very much for your remarks, and I hope that we may even get a copy of those remarks to study them a little bit more closely. But I want to turn to our next speaker, because I've been informed that one of our panelists does have to leave early, so I want to be able to get to the questions and comments from the floor as well as from me before he has to leave. Let me now then turn to First Admiral Datuk Suhaimi, Director of the Maritime Affairs of Sabah and Labuan from the Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency. First Admiral.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Setu Limaya. Good morning, Excellencies, esteemed panelists, distinguished guests, and the participants of 2024, the Manila Dialogue on the South China Sea. First of all, thank you very much to the organizer for the initiative and effort to hold such a meaningful dialogue like this. Ladies and gentlemen, I am First Admiral Maritime Datuk Cik Engku Suhaimi from Malaysian Coast Guard, and today I would like to speak about the vital role the Coast Guard plays as a guardian of the rule of law at sea. The ocean covers over 70% of our planet, serving a critical pathway for trade, resources, and transportation. Yet, there are also arenas where lawlessness can thrive. The Coast Guard stands as a bulwark against this, ensuring safety, security, and the rule of law. The origin of the Coast Guard can be traced back on the early 18th century, when it was established to enforce maritime laws and combat smuggling. Over the centuries, its mission has evolved, but its core purpose remained to uphold the law and protect our waters. This historical backdrop highlights the long-standing commitment of the Coast Guard to safeguard maritime interests. First of all, let me talk about responsibilities and include, but not limited to. First is law enforcement. The Coast Guard plays a crucial role in enforcing various maritime laws, including fishery regulation, environmental protection, and immigrants laws, through the patrol, vessel inspection, and the cargo check. As a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, Malaysia ensures the protection of its territorial waters and adherence to international maritime law. As the Asian-China Dialogue Relation Coordinator, Malaysia is committed to finalize the South China Sea Coast Code of Conduct to promote peaceful resolution and respect for maritime rights. The Coast Guard supports this effort by enhancing surveillance, enforcing UNCLOS provisions, and contributing to regional stability and the rule of law in the South China Sea. Second is search and rescue. The Coast Guard is often the first responder in maritime emergencies. The search and rescue operations save thousands of lives each year, reinforcing the principle that the law protects all individuals regardless of nationality. The third is counter-narcotic operation. The Coast Guard plays a critical role in combating drug trafficking at sea. By intercepting illegal shipment, it contributes not only to national security, but also to global stability. Number four is environmental protection. Protecting a maritime ecosystem is an essential aspect of our mission. The Coast Guard enforces regulation that prevent pollution and ensure sustainability practice, emphasizing the rule of law in environmental stewardship. Despite their crucial role, the Coast Guard faced significant challenges. First is resources limitation. With vast area to cover and limited resources, the Coast Guard must prioritize its mission, which can leave gap in enforcement. The second, increasing the threat. Modern piracy, human trafficking, and environmental crime are on the rise, demanding more sophisticated responses and international cooperation. The third, jurisdiction complexities. The ocean's boundaries are often murky, with overlapping jurisdiction complicating enforcement effort. The Coast Guard must navigate these legal challenges while maintaining effective law enforcement. And of course, we need to look into action to overcome those challenges. Among all, the challenge is the importance of international cooperation. Given the global natural of maritime law, international cooperation is essential. The Coast Guard collaborate with other nations to share intelligence, conduct joint operations, and harmonize legal framework. Initiatives such as the Polarization Security Initiative and the Global Maritime Crime Program exemplify how collaboration enhances the enforcement of the rule of law at sea. Malaysia itself had shared the important role played by Malaysian Coast Guard in maintaining the sovereignty of countries' water and also best practice in enforcement and also strengthening the regional cooperation, especially at our maritime borders. The role of technology. Investment in technology have transformed the Coast Guard capabilities. Drone, satellite tracking, and advanced surveillance systems improve their ability to monitor vast ocean expanse. This tool enhance situational awareness and support effective enforcement, ensuring that the rule of law is upheld even in remote areas. In conclusion, the Coast Guard serves as a vital guardian of the rule of law at sea, facing complex challenges with resilience and determination. Their multifaceted responsibilities not only protect national interests but also promote global stability and security. As we look to the future, we must support their effort, recognizing that the ocean must be governed by law, ensuring safety for all who traverse these vital waters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, First Admiral Suhaimi, for your remarks. We now turn to not a Coast Guard officer, but to the Ambassador of Vietnam to the Philippines, His Excellency Lai Tai Bin.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and friends, this morning I could listen to my friends and other panelists for a lot of insightful commentaries into the Coast Guard cooperation, and so I try to keep it short. As you know, the Coast Guard cooperation is agreed by almost everyone that very essential, very crucial for enforcing the international law and enhancing cooperation against threats and non-traditional security issues. But there's one problem that many people ask, which is how effective it is for the Coast Guard cooperation. And there are reasons to ask that question because usually there are some factors that can prevent nationals, regional countries from effective cooperation. Unlike the Philippine Coast Guard, which has a very long history, a lot of Coast Guard in the region are quite young with limited capacity. And I think that sometimes cooperation among the Coast Guard also, impacted by the lack of trust and confidence, especially among the conflicts or heightened tensions. So it is very important to see how we can enhance cooperation among the Coast Guard substantively. For over the past 20 years, Vietnam has been able to invest a lot in in order to reinforce our legal system to support the Coast Guard of Vietnam. And this is, we based on our foreign policy, especially the ones related to the South China Sea, with the main principle of peaceful resolution to the disputes, multilateral cooperation, and the adherence to international laws and norms. And we have been able to modernize our Coast Guard ships and surveillance system, train our people, and more importantly, we can enhance international cooperation with not only the regional countries, but also the international community. And among our best relationship, Vietnam and Philippine Coast Guard has been a highlight, especially during this year. I remember that Admiral Gavan was one of the first high-ranking Filipino government officials that I met just after I arrived here. And thanks to his leadership, thanks to the good relation between the two countries, and the strategic partnership between Vietnam and the Philippines, in 2024, we could do a lot of things among the two Coast Guards. We signed an MOU between the two Coast Guards during the state visit by President Marcos Jr. We reactivated the hotline between the two Coast Guards. We did a lot of exchange of delegations, including the Admiral's delegation himself to Vietnam. And there was the first ship visit from Vietnam to the Philippines. And we also had the first joint exercises in search and rescue and fire prevention and protection. And you may provide our friends with more detail on those things. So in the future, I think that Vietnam and the Philippines will be continuing to share information between the two Coast Guards, having more joint activities to address the threats and non-traditional security issues, and also to enhance capacity training, which is very essential to both Coast Guards. And the cooperation between Vietnam and the Philippines underscore the value of collaboration over competition in maritime security issues, not only between the two countries, but I believe that it will be among law enforcement agencies in the region in the future. So thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Really appreciate your comments, including raising the issue of some of the constraints that affect Coast Guards, as well as some elements of regional cooperation. I've been advised that Admiral Gavan has to leave early from this panel, so I do want to take the opportunity while he's here to ask some questions, but as I do so, to invite all of those around the room, because this session is supposed to be very interactive, to please prepare your comments and or questions for either the panel as a whole or a particular speaker while we first start off with Admiral Gavan, and then I'll go to some of the other panelists. And please just use the standard practice of raising your tent card or somehow capturing my attention. I can't see everyone because I have bright lights in front of me, facing me, but I'll try to identify around the table, or forgive me if I point to you. Admiral Gavan, you had one remark about the 3 tracks that you're using. And you mentioned a couple of items in each of the tracks, but I'd like you to say a little bit more, particularly since we are here in the Philippines, a little bit more about the Coast Guard's plans for its capacity and for developing further capabilities. And second, I wanted to raise the issue that we're talking about a theme on guardians of law. And in that spirit, there is international law, and many of you spoke about it. But there have also been national laws promulgated around the region about maritime issues. And in the Philippines, as I understand it, the maritime zones and the archipelagic sea lanes laws are about to be signed. And so I'd like you to say a little bit more about what you anticipate as a guardian of law, of the rule of law, for national legislation relating to maritime areas, not just UNCLOS, and how you see that affecting. And for the rest of the panel, these questions are specifically for Admiral Gavan, so before he has to depart, but I would ask you to also address the issue of how you see rule of law for enforcing national laws on maritime issues as well as international laws. Please, Admiral.
Thank you, Doctor. I think there are two items, the capability development, and second is the authorities that we have, not only the international law. Well, I'd like to start by highlighting that we in the Coast Guard believes that for us to be strong, we have to address three things. One is the authorizing environment, or the legal basis as to why we exist, and as to how far we can go and do things. We have recently been accorded by the administration with the opportunity to have more ships. A few days ago, the President approved the acquisition of 40 ships from France. Previous months, he also approved the acquisition of 5 ships from Japan, and a few others which will be built here. In all, we'll be receiving around 49 ships. And starting 2027, we will be adding at least 49 ships to our fleet. So that will more than double the capability of the Philippine Coast Guard. And also we're investing in our surveillance capabilities. But more significantly, I think we are also investing so much in our human capital. The Philippine Coast Guard is now more than 30,000. We're looking at being 37,000 before the year ends next year. And with that, I think we'll be one of the most manned Coast Guard in this part of the world. We have been investing so much in our human capital and in our tools because we want to have that ability to do the right things right. We must have learned people manning the tools that we have. And insofar as our authorizing environment is concerned, recently, our Congress has passed the Maritime Zones Act and the Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act, both of which are due to be signed by the President in a few days. We are law enforcers, and fundamental to the things we do is we must have clear laws to enforce. And for us to have clean hands when we go to court or international court, we must make sure that our local laws are aligned with international laws, particularly or including UNCLOS and other instruments. So that two laws actually do not only empower us to perform certain actions at sea, but at the same time also shows to the world that the Philippines is a responsible state, because those two laws also recognize the obligations that we have, especially when, as we claim, that we are an archipelagic state. The Coast Guard will be playing great roles in enforcing these laws. The Maritime Zones Law will define the extent of our territorial sea, contiguous zone, and exclusive economic zone. Zones which are which have to be policed in consonance with specific regimes provided by international law. The Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act will pose as a greater challenge. The Philippines is an archipelagic state with 7,641 islands, and we have so many routes normally used for international navigation. We anticipate the stresses this law will bring when the international or the global shipping will have to adjust their routes to these specific routes defined by the law. The conflict or the tension between shipping economics and security might come into play in the coming years, and the Coast Guard will have to be prepared to exercise our rights and obligations along these sea lanes. So we are at this stage now. That's why we are trying to develop the Philippine Coast Guard not only as a protector of rules, but the instrument of the country in fulfilling its obligation. Because after all, the Philippines, just like the other Coast Guards, or countries represented by their Coast Guards here, is a very responsible state. We abide with the law. We abide with the law. We are not we are not bullies. Filipinos are shaped by their forebears to be a peace-loving people. And that's why it has been very, very clear in several pronouncements of our president that the rule of law must prevail. That's why you can observe in the West Philippine Sea that no matter how ugly things have become, my people, the Philippine Coast Guard personnel, have remained calm, have remained professional, but unyielding, because it is what we are as people. After all, it is written in our Constitution, the country renounces war as instrument of national policy. So we will try to prevail through the rule of law, with the help of our neighbors and with the help of our friends, partners, and allies. We know that we can prevail because we believe that us, our fellow friends, our fellow Coast Guards in ASEAN, we believe that we are on the right side of the road. We can afford to chill, but prevail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Admiral Gavan. I do want to invite the other panel members to address, if they wish, this question of how you see your role as guardians of the rule of law, both for international law, and many of you mentioned UNCLOS in your opening remarks, but also for your national laws, and how you see that role being addressed to your national Coast Guards. Is there any, please?
Thank you. For Indonesian Coast Guard, to maintain the security and stability of the sea, of our waters, it should be referred to UN clause. There is no other rule. There is no other law of the sea. We wish all countries to use this law of the sea for maintaining our relation together to maintain security and safety. So, beside that, we always to elevate our quality of dialogue, quality of discussion for, especially for neighbor country, because we cannot deny that our intention, our interest at sea maybe the same. All country, especially in the regional. That's why we have to keep the safety and security together. As a neighbor country, we can do it together. No other way, I think, to maintain the security and safety in the waters in the regional, but only dialogue, discuss, and work together and have cooperation together. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Admiral. Would any of our other panelists like to address that question? No? Okay. Well, we have about, I think I counted 8 or 9 people on the floor, so I want to turn to them. And please forgive me, some of your tent cards came up after I made the list. I'll get you on, but I will do my best to go in the order that I saw the names come up. So starting first here with John Bradford.
Thank you very much, Satu. I guess I get to go first because I fortuitously sat closest to you.
Yeah,
you saw me
I
first.
turned to the right and saw you, John.
Thank you. I wanted to take advantage of this particular panel and the particular makeup of senior Coast Guard officers and diplomats to ask a question about the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum. I also wanted to congratulate the Philippine Coast Guard for hosting the 3rd meeting of that forum in Davao City earlier this year. Actually, I have 3 very short questions that are interrelated. One, now that it's met 3 times and it's been acknowledged in the ASEAN Foreign Ministers Statement, is the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum considered fully institutionalized, or is there more work to be done? The second question is, if there is more work to be done, what are the barriers or the challenges which are preventing that work or making it hard? And third, I think it's undeniable, everyone in this room would agree that this is a positive development, but the question is it an incremental development or is it a potential game changer, given the value that Coast Guards are playing in rule of law in this region? Thank you.
John has just given us another conference subject, which we're not going to take up in 45 minutes, but it's fair question, and I'd like to turn to the panel. Admiral, since you have to go, do you want to start first, and then we'll go down the panel?
Yeah, I'm the current chair, so I will respond.
You're the current chair, so please do begin by responding, and then we can go. Yeah. We need the microphone, I'm afraid. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, John. I am a fan of yours. Actually, I've read some of your papers before. I'd like to respond as the current chair of the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum. The first question, whether or not it has been institutionalized, not yet, but we're getting there. And we are aspiring not to be part of Annex 2, but instead to be part of Annex 1, to be an ASEAN body. It's a work in progress, but the good thing is participation has been getting better. What are the challenges? Well, of course, interests of states are uneven, but the positive thing is we are talking with each other. Whether or not it is beneficial, it is. Because we in ASEAN believes that for as long as we talk, for as long as we engage each other, then we are achieving our goal. I think I missed the third one.
What was the third, John?
I just was wondering if we should see this as incremental progress or a potential game changer.
Yes, it is a game changer. The rule is the rule of law. And if we can get the Coast Guards of the ASEAN states, which now serve as the fulcrum in this new geopolitics, I think we can shape the environment conducive for the rule of law to prevail. And there are different points of intersect amongst us, as mentioned by my counterparts. We all believe in the rule of law. We have all shared several IMO conventions. to which our states are parties. There's not much to discuss in coming up with a common protocol because it will just be anchored on existing International Maritime Organization conventions to which Coast Guards, or for which Coast Guards, are expected to enforce. We have all the opportunities to gel together. It will just take some time. But we, ASEANs, are patient. So for as long as we engage each other, we will get there. And we have been getting there. As you must have observed in recent years, there has not been any tensions amongst us at sea. Our relationship with Vietnam has been very, very good. Excellent. They came here this year for a port visit. I am going there next year, bringing my ship with us. Last year, Indonesia came here with my good friend, Admiral Ervancia. He brought his ship. I am going there this month with my ship. And we will be doing this in all ASEAN states. After all, we're one people. We're bound by our common culture, and we are all peace-loving people. It is a game changer. Let's just be patient. Let's just support it. Let's give it some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. Ambassador Tai Bin, you mentioned some differences in Coast Guards across the region, some impediments to cooperation, which bear on John's question and Admiral Gavan's response. Can you say a little bit more? Is your reading of the ASEAN effort similar, or do you foresee maybe a longer period of development of this effort?
Hello. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Personally, I think that in the long term, ASEAN cooperation is very important, and I'm sure that ASEAN Coast Guards are doing very well with each other. And but for the time being, I think that in order to enhance the enforcement capabilities, I think that bilateral relations are very important, and we should focus not only in international cooperation, ASEAN cooperation, but also bilateral relations in order to achieve, the overall good impact to the maritime security in the region. And not only among other countries, but also from the Vietnam's experience, we found out that without capacity, adequate capacities and capabilities, we cannot promote Coast Guard cooperation effectively among countries or within ASEAN ourselves. Vietnam had a lot of experience in this regard, and that's why you can see that over the past 10 years, Vietnam invested a lot into the modernization of our equipments, surveillance system, and personnel training. And if you look at some incidents happening in the South China Sea for the past 10 years or more, you can see very clearly that the lesson from the battlefield is that we have to reinforce ourselves first before reaching out. And even now, I think that there are still a lot of differences, and sometimes not only the capacities, but also the mutual trust and confidence building within on the regional countries. So I think that we should push forward everything at the same time. Yes.
Presumably some of this cooperation could help address those distrust issues. Are there any other of our Coast Guard officials who would like to comment on this issue of the ASEAN Coast Guard efforts? Yes. If there are any others who'd like to speak, and then otherwise I'll turn to Greg Poling as the next person on my list.
Thank you. I want to add a little bit. ASEAN Coast Guard Forum is initiated by Indonesian Coast Guard. Beside the bilateral cooperation, which is very important, but we feel we have to have ASEAN Coast Guard Forum as a ASEAN way to maintain security and safety at the region. We try to put the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum inside become a sector body of the ASEAN. Until now, it become one of pointers our government to speak in ASEAN Forum. Hopefully, next time, ASEAN Coast Forum will become a sector body of ASEAN. This is the way how the ASEAN Coast Guard to work together and show the world how ASEAN Coast Guard to maintain security and safety and in the region. As we can see, as Coast Guard Forum always like brothers, like neighbors, like old friends. If we met together, that's why I see this is the opportunity how Coast Guard become unite together in ASEAN to maintain security together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't think there's anyone else on the panel, so let me go to Greg Polling, was the next on my list. Please, Greg. It's not working, Greg, so maybe use neighbors, or if we could get a microphone to someone.
Any luck here? All right.
Better.
Thank you very much, Satu. My question is specific for Admiral Irvancia. 2 days ago, thank you. 2 days ago, the China Coast Guard left Indonesia's EEZ after spending 20 days harassing a Pertamina survey operation. I haven't checked the AIS this morning. Maybe Ray Powell has. I don't know if it's come back, but at least 20 days.
It has not come back.
Okay, and what was unusual about that was that Bakamla and the Indonesian Navy so quickly released photos and videos of the incident, something that we have become used to from the Philippine Coast Guard. Was this unusual response by Indonesia, this transparency, because the Chinese incursion was so unusual? Or does it represent a shift in tactics that we might see more of from the new Indonesian government?
Thanks, Greg. It's a question to only one of our panelists, so please, yes, Vice Admiral.
Thank you. Thank you for the good question. Last 3 days, 2 days, for Indonesian Coast Guard, this is the routine patrol activity. But in this era of transparency, we also have to show our people how our work to do with our assets and our budget. So we have to report to people also. That's why every time we have something in our patrol, we share to the media for our responsibility of the duty to maintain security of Indonesian water. In fact, many news that we share, maybe only one news the people are interested of. That's why maybe if you see our media, internal media of Indonesia Coast Guard, so many news we share every day. but maybe only one that news that you're interested. That's why you feel, oh, so very fast. I sit down now, and then 1 hour or 2 hours in front, that will be in my media. This is activity. Also in at sea, in patrolling activity, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours already in media. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Admiral. Greg, you okay? You got the answer, which seems to be not a fundamental shift. There's a lot of ongoing media. Next, Commodore Jay Turilla. Jay?
The Philippine Coast Guard champions transparency in the West Philippine Sea in support of the rules-based order. Would it be possible for the Coast Guards in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam also to do the same in exposing unlawful behavior of some state actors in the South China Sea? And if yes, can the Coast Guards in East and South China Sea can be able to have information sharing with other countries for us to counter such malign operations in the South China Sea? Thank you.
Jay, we'll turn to our panelists, but I just want to clarify, are you asking the question as setting up a new information sharing network or use existing platforms and or mechanisms to share that East China Sea, South China Sea?
Well, yeah, but my first question is, are countries from Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia are also going to replicate transparency in exposing unlawful behavior in the South China Sea?
Thank you, Commodore.
Thank you.
Can we start with our ambassador from Vietnam, and please ask all of our panelists to respond to this question.
I think that transparency is a major trend for all the nations in the region. So I think yes, but to what extent, I think that it depends on certain cases and the handling of information from the capital. But I'm sure that in the long term, transparency is something that all the regional countries follow. And I hope that during the upcoming visit by Admiral Gavan, you talk more about the information sharing mechanism. And actually, we have some other platform with support from the international community for the long term to share information, among countries, not only regional countries, but I think that is a little bit a long-term project. Yes. Thank you.
Vice Admiral and also First Admiral. Yes, please, and we'll just go down the line and ask each of you because the question was addressed to all of you.
Thank you.
Please speak loudly into that. I think we're having a little trouble with the audio.
Check. Thank you. Actually, in ASEAN Coast Guard Forum, we have a program for information sharing. Every day we communication. We do the communication, and weekly we have a weekly brief among the Coast Guard member of ASEAN Coast Guard Forum. So we communicate almost every day, and we have evaluate and share the important maybe information every week. We did it. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you. For Malaysian, yes, we do the information sharing. So we do the we use a different platform, such as mentioned by Vice Admiral Irwan Shah. We use Asian Forum, Asian Coast Guard Forum, which we use our Asian bilateral meeting, and we also do our exercise. Then we will also contribute in intelligence sharing by our counterpart in our neighbor countries. So that is information sharing we do all among our Coast Guard. Thank you.
Vice Admiral Kanasue, did you want to comment? Because Commodore addressed also East China Sea.
はい、ありがとうございます。南シナ海の状況に関しても我々はさまざまなチャンネルを通して情報の共有を図っております。
Thank you. With regards to the South China Sea, we make use of various channels in order to share information with our counterparts.
特にフィリピンコーストガードとの間では極めて緊密な情報交換をしておりますし、今後さらにそれを強化していこうという動きをしております。
In particular, with the Philippine Coast Guard, we have a very detailed information exchange with each other, which we intend to enhance even further.
私の冒頭の発言の一番最初に申したように、海は世界は海でつながっています。で特に南シナ海の状況というのは日本の経済にとっても極めて重要なエリアになります。そういった意味で、日本の海上保安庁としても南シナ海の、海の状況というのは極めて高い関心を持って見ております。
And as I mentioned in my comments earlier, we are connected by the ocean, and the South China Sea is important to us in terms of the Japanese economy, and as a result, it is a matter of great interest to Japan Coast Guard as well.
それから、日本が主導して世界長官級会合というのをこれまで3回実施しております。この会合開催して改めて分かったことがあります。
And Japan has created the Coast Guard Global Summit, which has been held 3 times so far, but there's something that we discovered as a result.
世界中でさまざまな海上保安機関、海上法執行機関がありますが、それぞれの成り立ち、歴史、あるいは与えられている権限というのは非常にバラエティに富んでいて様々で違いがあります。
And this is the fact that although there are coast guards established all over the world, their history, background, as well as the authority given to them is extremely varied.
ただ、海上における法執行機関としてよって立つべき理念というものは決して違ったものではない。やはり一つの真実の理念に基づいて我々は行動すべきだというのは各国の各機関が持っているということが分かりました。
But having said that, in terms of law enforcement at sea, the philosophy that we have is the same. We act based on the common concepts.
ただ各国が協力するためにはお互いのその違っている部分も含めてそれぞれの機関がどういった機関であるかということの理解が非常に重要であるということです。
But in order for these coast guards to cooperate, it's vital that we understand our differences to know each of our qualities.
で実際世界長官級会合で世界中のコーストガードと話をしてみるとさまざまなリージョナルさまざまなレベルで実際にもうそういった各種のフォーラムが開催されているということを改めて知ることができました。
And having talked with various coast guards at the global summit, we also discovered that there are different forums which has taken shape in various regions and at various working levels.
でASEAN フォーラムという ASEAN のコーストガードのフォーラムというのがスタートしているということについてもそういった意味でこういった取り組みは日本のコーストガードとしても非常に嬉しく喜ばしい、我々としても歓迎すべき動きだと思っております。
And so the fact that in the ASEAN region as well, there is a Coast Guard forum that's started off is a matter that Japan Coast Guard welcomes and is very happy to note.
はい、以上です。
Thank you.
Vice Admiral Kanosue, thanks so much for that very fulsome response. I've seen 3 or 4 more tent cards come up. I think I have 9 on my list, but I'm going to try to go through. We have about 30 minutes. I see one tent card in the corner there, and I can't read it from here. Please, I would invite you to make your question or comment. I can't read the name from here, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Atsuko Kanuhara of Japan, Research Director for the Cannon Institute for Global Studies. I would like to make very brief comment, 2 comments. One is general, the other is specific. One is regarding the meaning of the rule of law, because this is the main theme of this year's Manila Dialogue. But the rule of law principle has very different meanings depending on the context. It has its origin in the common law tradition under domestic law. For international maritime order, for instance, in 2014, on the occasion of the 13th meeting of Shangri-La Dialogue, late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe defined 3 main pillars for the rule of law for ocean order. First, claims should be based on law. Second, no unilateral change of status quo by force is permitted. Third, peaceful settlement of international disputes. I hope I could contribute to common understanding of the rule of law principle among the participants of this Manila Dialogue. My second comment is regarding the Vice Admiral Kanosue's presentation, and it is, I think, somehow related to Mr. Chair's comment on the law enforcement of national law. Mr. Kanosue spoke about proportionality and necessity. They are concepts under Japanese domestic laws, so they have different meanings from the proportionality and the necessity under international law. I think we should be very careful on this point. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your comment. I think you raised the issue that I was very keen on, which is bridging the consensus that all panelists spoke about of observing international law, but also dealing with enforcing as national coast guards domestic law. And as you say, there are different interpretations and different emphases as a result of those 2 sets of rules of law. And since the theme is guardians of law, how can we better do that? And I really appreciate your input. But I would invite any of the panelists, if they wish, to respond to those interventions by your colleague. And if there are none, we will move to the next question. But I do want to give you a chance if you wish to say something specific. Anyone? Vice Admiral Kanosue, please.
金原先生、ありがとうございます。ご指摘の通りだとは思います。
Thank you for the comment. I'm totally in agreement with what you said.
国際法、国内法に取り組む場合、あるいは国内法を制定するときに国際法との整合性をどう図るかという問題は非常にセンシティブな問題。
Between international law and domestic law, when you formulate domestic laws, you need to consider how it relates to existing international laws.
各国の国内法の内容というのは当然その国の歴史や政治的な思惑なんかも含めて成立成り立ってくるものですので、国によってどうしても違いが出てきます。
Domestic laws are a result of whatever history that the country has undergone, as well as other political backgrounds, and so naturally there will be differences.
そうした作業の中で国際法の解釈が国によって異なってしまうということは現実的には起こりうるというか起こっていることだとは思います。
And it is a reality that there are different interpretations of international law that currently exists.
ただそれをそのまま放っておくと法執行機関が法執行国内法にのっとって法執行する際の、解釈の違いであったり、手段の違いであったりそういったものに出てくる、そういったことが問題として生じてしまう。
But this matter should not be left as it is because it would result in different interpretations or actions being undertaken by law enforcement organizations.
やはりその国際法を正しくあるいは共通の認識で理解していくというためにはお互いのさまざまな、こういった今回のフォーラムもそうですがお互いの考え方をしっかりと開示してもらって、認識の共通化を図っていくという作業は非常に大事なのかなというふうには思います。
In order for there to be common understanding about the existing international laws, forums such as this play a vital role so that we can come to a common stance.
海上保安庁としてもそういった意味で、このような活動には積極的に参加し努力していきたいと思っています。ありがとうございます。
For that purpose as well, JCG intends to continue participating in these forums and activities to realize that.
Thank you very much, Vice Admiral. We'll now turn to, I know there are folks who are waiting. I have you on the list. I've seen you, but I didn't see you in the order that maybe we want to see Colin Coe and Dr. Suleiman and Admiral Chauhan as well. Vic Tran is next.
Thanks, Satu. My question is to Ambassador Lai Tai-bing. So I would like to hear your opinion on the idea to establish a maritime agency in Vietnam that receives all the maritime-related information at sea and then send it to a suitable agency. Thanks.
Oh, it is a very good idea, actually, and maybe it will also have not only the international community but also the embassies and Vietnamese ambassador to perform our duties more effectively. But I'm not sure about the possibility in the near future. So, and what Vietnam is trying to do is to enhancing information coordination within the system by, like modernization of the information system, better coordination, by law and regulations, and establishing platform with international support, including other nations and regional countries. But I think that, as I mentioned, I think that it should be a very long-term project. Yeah, but we started talking about that with the international community already. Thank you.
Thanks very much. The next question, Thomas Daniel, and then we'll turn to Admiral Chong.
Thank you, Satu. I have two questions. The first is for Admiral Gavan. Admiral, I'm quite pleased to hear that there is significant progress in the ASEAN Coast Guard forums and in terms of cooperation. I wonder, though, if you could perhaps elaborate on some of the pressure points where you feel that ASEAN Coast Guards can and should really move forward on. What are these difficult pressure points, and how best do you think you and your peers can address and move forward? My second question is to Vice Admiral Irvansha and to First Admiral Datuk Cengku Suhaimi. And I want to push the question by Commodore Tariela again. Yes, you may have mechanisms where you share with your Coast Guard, your official stakeholders on malign behavior in the South China Sea or in any of your maritime zones. What about the sharing of this information or the publicity of this information in a much more public domain? Do you feel that this is something that is useful, or do you feel that this will bring on added difficulties to your respective stakeholders? And I ask this because in 2017 and 2018, the Malaysian Coast Guard used to be extremely proactive in publicly sharing incidences of misbehavior in our various maritime zones, and we don't see this anymore. Would appreciate some kind of comment on that. Thank you.
Thomas, what was the reason, in your view, about why that change occurred? Because there is a context for that change.
I'm not a speaker here, Satu. I think I would say political leadership has a lot to do with it, but I would like to hear from the officials as well.
So the first question was for Admiral Gavan. Yes? I think you can use that now. I hope.
It's working now? Yeah, it's working. Thank you. As to what you have heard, I think one of the greatest challenges that we have to face in the formation of the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum is the trust and confidence amongst us. And we have been addressing that through the conduct of common training amongst our people. Because we believe if our people will train together and in some instances work together, trust and confidence amongst each other can happen naturally. So it will really take time, but we will get there. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the next question that Thomas had was to Vice Admiral Ivance and to Admiral Kanusue.
Thank you for the question. For Indonesia Coast Guard, all the information, all the news is open, and everybody welcome to us. The data, information from us. But actually, usually the media will come to me, will come to us. We go to all media. We don't have any media, all media addresses. We don't know everybody. But if media see this very good information, good news, everybody can come to our office and our media center. Thank you.
Vice Admiral Kanusue. Oh, yes, please, yes, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
Thank you. For Malaysia, in our Coast Guard, Malaysian Coast Guard, we share the information within our people. You can find now in social media. It always we send our information about anything happen, what we do in our waters by catching them, by arrest them. So we show in our social media and other thing in our also mass media, such as in our what we call by our minister. So that's all.
Okay, Thomas. Admiral Chauhan, I think you were next on my list.
Thank you very much, Satu. My name is Vice Admiral Chauhan. I'm the Director General of the National Maritime Foundation in New Delhi. I have one question for the panel and one comment and one specific question. So let me address the panel as a whole. During the various discussions of collaboration between Coast Guard organizations in terms of their actual operations, I'm not talking about training, I'm not talking about information sharing. There is an issue of national jurisdiction which varies from state to state in terms of the Coast Guard. And when Coast Guards tend to operate jointly or in combined fashion outside those areas of jurisdiction, we can have a significant legal limitation or challenge. So, and in the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum, how is this, or is this being discussed at all, and if so, what is the outcome? And my specific comment is actually arising from Admiral Irvancia's comment that UNCLOS is the only law at sea. And I wanted to ask whether this is a good position to take, because the IMO is a convention that was signed and ratified. The COLREGS is a convention that was signed and ratified and determines the behavior of seagoing entities. So if we, or the ITU is a convention that was signed and ratified, and these three put together actually determine the behavior of entities at sea. And if we concentrate solely upon UNCLOS, then do you not think that we are diminishing our approach in terms of the number of legal instruments that we can bring to bear so as to curb bad behavior at sea? My specific question is to Admiral Gavan. And that is that I was very impressed, of course, and like everybody else, with the sudden expansion of the Coast Guard here in the Philippines. However, sudden expansion of capacity and capability are not matched, because you can suddenly expand the numbers involved of ships, you can expand the number of training academies you have, but that won't automatically lead to the number of trainers that are going to be required of a certain quality. And so you could end up in the situation that China finds itself, where this vast sudden expansion of all kinds of seagoing security agencies is not matched by good training, leading to unprofessional behavior at sea. How then will the Philippines address this issue of the training of its personnel in this? I know that you said that there is a large amount of effort being put on capability enhancement, but where will the trainers come from?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Admiral. Admiral Gavan, why don't you do the specific question, and that'll give time for the rest of the panel to respond to the larger question about the different legal regimes and opportunities. Please.
So that will be the last question.
And then
I
you're
can
leaving.
respond. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you very much for that very candid observation. I agree with you. A sudden change in one aspect of our capability can lead to stresses in the other aspects. We recognize the .EMPLF as a framework to guide us in our capability development, from doctrines to organization, training, material. Personnel is just one, leadership, facilities, and even the sustainment requirements of the capability should be addressed in harmony, in sync with each other. We know that, we're aware of that. And that's why we are taking our expansion through a phasing scheme. It can take us a few years to get there, we know. But what I'm saying is the government is now very, very serious in putting its resources to where its mouth is. The country has prepared the Coast Guard to be its instrument in advancing its interest at sea. So the government is pouring in money to enable the Coast Guard pursue that rules-based and peaceful approach in securing our interest at sea. When are we going to complete this process to be that big Coast Guard that we aspire? It will take a while. And thank you very much for reminding us that there is such a thing that we should be very, very concerned about. That stress. It can snap. Some elements of the capability can snap at some point if we don't manage it well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Admiral. For the rest of the panel, there was Vice Admiral's question about different regimes, not just UNCLOS, but maybe others would like to comment on the. Please, Ambassador.
I'd like to take some short comments. So, yes, and no, but I think that until now, UNCLOS should be still the overarching legal framework that we should follow. Yeah, although I understand that there are, other legal mechanisms, and sometimes the interpretation of even UNCLOS still, have some problems for us to discuss over time. And actually, you are right that over the past few years, especially around the 40th anniversary of the UNCLOS, there was a lot of discussion about the legitimacy, accuracy, effectiveness of UNCLOS governing the issues at seas and in oceans. But so far, it is still the most important legal document that we have to rely on in order to enhance international cooperation, related to the sea. And for the activities out of the jurisdiction area, I know that in the region and international arena, we have to talk a lot about that. But from the Vietnamese perspective, as we stated in our law, if we have activities out of the jurisdiction area, we should follow the regulations of international law and the international agreements between Vietnam and other countries.
Are there any other comments on Vice Admiral's question? Otherwise, the organizers would like to take a quick photo before Admiral Gavan leaves, and then we'll come back to the questions. We're just going to be very adaptable and flexible. Vice Admiral Ivanse.
Yeah, maybe a short answer. Everybody know the law for maintain the security, how to measure the distance of the border from only in UN clause. IMO only regulated for the port security, for security of sailing, and COLREC is only like a traffic regulation, how to sail with the ship, so how to sail so in safety, not mention about the border, not mention about the security, how to measure the maritime zone, jurisdiction. They are all in UNCLOS, not inside the IMO or COLREC. Thank you.
For us, what I spoke before is we had a problem in jurisdiction complete. We call complexity, because different region, different boundaries, different area is different jurisdiction. So for us, we enforce the law. We enforce what they given to us to force what act we have. We need to enforce. But certain problem exists with the jurisdiction. So we refer to our legislation. So that's a court to decide. So we just want to our maritime area is stabilized, and the safety of our maritime. That's all. That's what we do in our maritime area. Thank you.
Vice Admiral Kanasue, do you have any comments on the question? Otherwise, we'll take the photo.
はい、短めのコメントをしたいと思います。
Yes, just a quick comment.
アンクロスはやはり海に関するかなり網羅的で基本的な法律なので非常に重要だとは思っております。
UNCLOS is quite comprehensive, so I believe it does play an important role.
特に管轄権とか権限の問題に関するそういった問題が生じた場合にはやはりアンクロスというのを非常にベースに置いて考えるべきだとは思っております。
I believe when there's any jurisdictional related issues, UNCLOS should be at the base of in considering the matter.
ただ、もちろん海に関する条約、船、船員、漁業、貿易、さまざまな条約は他にもありますので、もちろんそういったものもそれぞれのマターで尊重して、守っていく必要はあると思っております。
But naturally, there are other international treaties which cover matters of the sea, shipping, fisheries, and cruise. So these also should be taken into consideration.
Thank you very much. As I understand it now, the organizers want us to pause, take a photo, and then go to Renato de Castro and Colin Coe are next, followed by Dr. Suleiman and our colleague on the far left of this table on this side.
Thank you very much, sir. So we'll be proceeding with the photo opportunity. We would like to request the panel to please rise together with our panel chair, of course, for the photo opportunity. Our photographers are already ready as well, sir.
Here.
Yes, sir, just in front. All just need to do is for the panel to please rise together with our panel chair. We have a quick photo, and then we'll be continuing with our question and answer for this morning. Requesting our photographers be ready, sir. The main photographer is already ready. We'll have a quick smile in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, sir. And then we can continue with the question and answers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, as the host, I'd like to apologize for that I have to leave early. But rest assured that I will be leaving behind a person who is more competent than me. Commodore Tariela is designated to stand in my stead while I'm away. Please respond to questions to be raised by our friends and partners. I'm very sure he will be able to answer it more clearly. He is the new Manny Pacquiao of the Philippine Coast Guard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Admiral. Commodore, do you want to come over here or do you want to stay in your place? Okay, we'll turn to you if there are any other questions for Philippines and for Admiral Gavan. Look, let's turn to, we have very few minutes left, so I want to really bunch up the questions. Renato, please make your comment or question.
I will be very fast.
And also Colin Coe after that.
Okay, 2 short questions. Number 1 addressed to Commodore, Commodore Tariala.
Okay.
And the other one addressed to First Admiral Tak. First one addressed to Commodore Tariala. Well, we have discussed about the buildup of the Philippine Coast Guard. Recently, I read an article that the Philippine Coast Guard will have 40 ships, patrol ships from France. And of course, we have 5 97-footer from Japan. But I'm wondering whether the Philippine Coast Guard would source its ships from any Philippine shipyard. Because most of the ships that the Philippine Coast Guard are getting are, of course, foreign-made. Is there any plan for the Philippine Coast Guard to source vessels from Philippine sources? Now, this second question is addressed to the First Admiral. In one webinar which I attended, I remember Dr. Dewi Portuna mentioning this in the light of the standoff between the Indonesian Coast Guard and the Chinese Coast Guard. Indonesia would never ask any assistance. It is the dispute between China and Indonesia. It's just between the two of them. Does that mean Indonesia, again, would not at least source any assistance from other ASEAN countries? And in such a manner, Indonesia is playing to the Chinese approach on resolving the South China Sea issue. It will always be bilateral. Can you comment on this, Admiral?
That's for Vice Admiral Iranche. Yes? Okay. So, Commodore, do you want to actually hold that thought. You have a question to you, and Vice Admiral Iranche has a question about Indonesia's response about bilateralism with China. But I want to take Colin Coe's question too.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Satu. I'll be very quick. I'm glad the question was asked about proportionality. I remember hearing around the region also talking about the same thing, and again, boiling down to different interpretation. I just want to muddy the waters a little bit. we don't just have Coast Guards operating in the same water space. We have naval forces operating in the same water space as well. And they are carrying out sovereignty assertion as well. So just to hear from the panel, any comment or any thoughts on whether it's possible to reconcile Coast Guards and navies when it comes to coming up with some sort of consensus on what do we mean by proportionality of the use of force, what are the do's and don'ts that we can lay out. I think that may have some implications on the ongoing code of conduct negotiations that we have. Thank you.
And Colin, is that consensus between the navies and the coast guards of individual countries or amongst the regional?
Amongst regional, best of all, beyond Southeast Asia.
Because I can imagine cases where even navies and coast guards of the same country don't have exact views on proportionality.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So those are the two questions, and let's take those, and then we'll turn to Dr. Suleiman. And I'm sorry I cannot read because of the plant in the way of the panel of the speaker here. So we'll go to those second. Commodore, question for you first. Are you going to source some of these 49 ships or future ships from Philippine shipbuilders?
Thank you, Satu. Thank you, Professor De Castro, for a very interesting question. So on the part of the Philippine Coast Guard, we have always been, supporting the local shipbuilding. As a matter of fact, whenever we talk to ODA countries that are going to fund the acquisition of vessels, we always push for local shipbuilders. We did that when we were talking to the Japanese government for the JICA funding of the 44-meter vessels. Unfortunately, the Japanese government wanted to construct those 44-meter vessels and the 97-meter vessels in Japan. Now, for this French vessel that was discussed by the Commandant, out of those 40 vessels, 20 of that will be constructed in France, and then the other 20 will also be constructed here in the Philippines. So, just to simplify my answer, the Philippine Coast Guard supports the local shipbuilding, but again, it is dependent on those countries who's going to fund the construction of those vessels.
Thank you, Commodore. And for the other question, please, Vice Admiral Irvanse.
Thank you. For cooperation, bilateral or multilateral, is in our Coast Guard is decided by our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you.
Okay, so it's a foreign affairs decision on cooperation. Okay, on Colin Coe's question, for anyone from the panel would like to address the issue of proportionality and the possibility of consensus about proportionality, given that both navies and coast guards are operating in contested spaces and trying to assert sovereignty. And I would say not just navies, but coast guards are also asserting sovereignty.
Thank you, Mr. Ko. For Malaysian, we know the Navy function and Coast Guard function is different. So we running the white hull diplomacy, and the Navy is grey hull diplomacy. So this is different. So we just what the function of our Coast Guard is: we search and rescue. We enforce the law. So the Navy is to defend our nation. So this is different. We can do a law enforcement because they didn't have any act or any power to run the law. So law enforcement is belong to Coast Guard. So that's all.
Thank you very much. And Vice Admiral Kanasue, you had raised the issue of proportionality and had an exchange with Dr. Kanehara of the Cannon Institute as well. Did you want to comment, sir, on this?
はい、海軍とコーストガードの関係については、各国でその組織や権限、機能というのは異なっているというのが現状だと思っています。
With regards to the role of the Navy versus the Coast Guard, authority and functions that is bestowed upon each organization differs from country to country.
日本の場合は、海上保安庁と、海上自衛隊、とは完全にその権限をこう分けています。
In the case of Japan, the authority given to Japan Coast Guard and the self-defense forces is very clearly and markedly delineated.
海上保安庁の任務にも権限にもミリタリーの要素は一切入ってませんし、そのような活動をしてはいけないということが法律に明記されています。
In the role and authority bestowed upon Japan Coast Guard, there is no military component whatsoever, and we are clearly defined by law to not be allowed to do such activities.
一方で、海上保安庁の能力で対処しきれない事態が起こった場合に、それでも法執行の警察活動として対処する必要がある場合には、海上自衛隊がその役割をすることができるという法律があります。
On the other hand, if there is a circumstance which Japan Coast Guard's capabilities is unable to handle, then there is a authority given to the self-defense force to carry out the law enforcement on its behalf.
これは例えば海上保安庁の巡視船がスピードが足らなくて追いつけないという時に、海上自衛隊の船でより速いアセットで追跡をしてもらうというような、そういったイメージです。
So this, for example, this is a case, for example, if the Japan Coast Guard patrol vessel is not fast enough in order to pursue a suspect ship, but the self-defense force asset can, then they would take on that task.
ただこういったケースの場合は、海上自衛隊の船は、軍事力としての実力行使はしてはいけない。あくまで警察活動としての武器の使用の範囲にとどめなければならないという制限がかけられます。
But there is a limitation placed upon the self-defense force asset in this situation where they are not allowed to operate as a military force, but strictly as a police enforcement agency.
こういったように日本の場合は法執行活動と軍事活動、あくまで、はっきりと区別して、そこにグレーな状態がない形に、なってます。
So in the case of Japan, law enforcement and military activities is clearly separated and defined so that there is no gray area.
そういった意味では日本は法執行はあくまで法執行で、貫くというスタンスですが、この辺は国によっても考え方も違っている部分はあるかとは思っております。
So in Japan, the understanding is that law enforcement is done by a law enforcement agency, but there are different positions taken in other countries.
我々の場合はその法執行はあくまで法執行で、気がついたらミリタリーにステージが変わっているといったことがないようにというために、そういった法の成り立ち権限の付与の仕方になっているということです。
So the law and authorities designated is defined in such a way that law enforcement is undertaken by law enforcement agencies, and we don't have a situation where after the excitement, there's a realization that they had switched to a military type of activity.
Thank you very much, Vice Admiral Kanasue. Jeffrey, we're running a little bit late, as you know. There were two last speakers who wanted to intervene from the original list. Do we have time to take those two together? No. Fair enough. Thank you for the clear instructions. I'm sorry, but we do have to end the list. I know our panelists will be here for a few moments, so Dr. Suleiman and our colleague at the very far end of the table there, I can't read the sign, please do come up and ask our panelists. But please join me in thanking a superb group of ambassadors and Coast Guard officials from around the region for this morning's opening session. Thank you very much.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We just concluded our first panel, the opening plenary, the Coast Guard as guardians of the rule of law at sea. So we just have a quick instruction for the next part of our program. It's going to be two things. The first part will be working lunch, which is going to be beyond the superpower regional approaches to maritime security, burden sharing, a Conrad Adenauer Stiftung special working lunch roundtable, and this is by invitation only. So those invited participants should proceed to apartment 301 in the 3rd floor. And the rest of the participants may proceed to the grand kitchen at the 2nd floor for our lunch. And of course, please be back by 1:30 p.m. or earlier. And let's give ourselves a big round of applause and everyone have a great lunch.
Like